So a few weeks ago, we got some very sad news from Nintendo. Charles Martinet, the longtime iconic voice behind Mario, is stepping back from the role and into the role of Mario Ambassador. We didn't really know what that meant. There was a lot of confusion, a lot of sadness. At the time, my gut reaction was to make some kind of a video about it, and I chose not to do that because in the announcement, they said that Shigeru Miyamoto and Charles Martinet would be putting out a video together to kind of explain what's going on. So earlier this week, we actually got that video. It did kind of explain, but like what information they gave was sort of what we already had been gleaming about the situation. So a bit of background context, if you're unaware, Charles Martinet is the voice of Mario, as well as Luigi, Waluigi, and Wario. For anyone who's not as like Nintendo savvy, also just, example of his vocal range, he's also the voice of Parthenax from Skyrim. So, yeah, same guy.
It's me, Mario!
Shortly after the original tweet was made by Nintendo, Charles did comment on it and state that, he was excited about the upcoming journey. He said that in his heart, all of the fans were number one, hashtag Wahoo. And I gotta be honest, it choked me up a little bit. It's hard to see him leave that role. He's been in it for so long. Charles Martinet started voicing Mario at a trade show in 1991. That's the year I was born. He's literally been voicing Mario since I was alive. For my entire life, this man has been the voice of Mario. And it's not just me. A lot of the, back end, the 90s millennials and, all of Gen Z, this guy is the only voice of Mario. The games before the ones where he's the voice actor don't have voice acting at all. I mean, there were some cartoons in the 80s and the early 90s, but those aren't as nostalgic as the games themselves. Like, I like the Super Mario Super Show. I like its sequels. But, when it comes to Mario, when you say Mario, the first thing that comes to my mind isn't those cartoons. It's the games. And for me, Charles has been the voice of Mario as long as I can remember, man. Like I said, he began the role the year I was born. The first time he was Mario in a video game was in Mario 64, 1996. I was 5 years old, and it was such a big deal. Not only was Mario in a 3D world, you could run around in multiple directions. That was super cool, but on top of that, he had a voice now. He actually talked when you hit the buttons, when you jumped. I remember the first time laying eyes on Bob-omb Battlefield and just running around and having a hell of a time. And to think back about all of the games, the just iconic games that Charles has been a part of, and how many of those had such a big impact on my life, it really is weird to think about him not being in that role anymore. One of my favorite consoles that I've ever owned was the GameCube, and when it launched, it had Luigi's Mansion. It was the first game that really, really focused on Luigi. We had a few Luigi games before that, but this was one where Luigi was really actually the star. It wasn't some kind of a gimmick. It wasn't just a Mario game with Luigi. It was Luigi's game. It was his own mythos, his own little world within the Mario world. And that was awesome. Before that game, Charles was one of 2 Luigi voice actors. After that game, Charles was the only Luigi voice actor. And thinking back to how amazing that game was, how well it did, and how it's now got it's its own IP now. It is a franchise within the Mario franchise. It makes a lot of sense that not only is that where we get a lot of our modern Luigi-isms from, but it's also where we start his real iconic voice, the one that we all know and love. Okay, so on to this Charles and Miyamoto video. So as the video starts, Charles kind of just talks about his history with the role. He kind of just brings up some real, things that we know about him and his role as Mario. Then it goes to Miyamoto. He kind of tells some fun anecdotes about how the two of them first met. And then it goes back to Charles, and he starts saying goodbye to everyone. He starts talking about how he's really excited to be this Mario ambassador, something that we were all really confused about, and we're still a little confused about, but from what we can see from it, the thing that a lot of us were already kind of assuming before they explained it is that Charles is going to be traveling a lot. He's going to be going to conventions. He's going to be going to events, meeting fans, doing the voices that he came up with. These are voices he invented, by the way. I want to point that out. Those were ones he came up with for those characters. But he's going to be going to events, meeting fans, doing the voices, and just spreading the love of Mario, in his own words. And, as he talks about that, he kind of starts going on about how much the fans mean to him, about how much the roles meant to him, And I gotta say, I'm almost 32 years old. I am a grown-ass man. And hearing him talk about this, it really did, I started tearing up, man. And it feels ridiculous. Why am I getting emotional over this, plumber from a video game series? But Mario is such a big part of my life. Not just Mario specifically, but Mario started my love of video games. And video games were such a big part of growing up. I played multiple systems from multiple different, companies. I didn't just play Nintendo, but Mario was one of the ones that really started that love of gaming. And to go back and think about all the great times I had, with my friends, with my brothers, playing Mario games, playing games where Charles was voice acting as Mario and Luigi and, even Wario and Waluigi. I didn't play Wario games as much, but, I liked all of those games. And it's really hard to think about those roles without him. It's something that I think we're going to have to get used to, for sure. He's not retiring from voice acting is a wild thing that we found out, but he is still stepping back from those roles. And that's something it's just so weird. It kind of helps that this is something that some people were already anticipating to an extent. This was a gut punch for sure to have it really confirmed. But, I think for me personally, I'm glad that I already sort of had the seeds of that planted in me by other people. Specifically, a few months ago, we had a Nintendo Direct. It's the one that announced Super Mario Bros. Wonder, as well as the next Wario game. Arlo, specifically for me, there were other people, I think, on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. That's really stupid. It's no. But Arlo did a whole video kind of comparing Charles's voice to the voices of the new people. And, he was admitting that he wanted to be skeptical, but it really didn't sound like Charles. It sounded like someone doing the voices that Charles came up with, but it didn't sound like him. It wasn't his usual delivery. It was something that a lot of us were worried about. I was super worried about it at the time. But yeah, no, it's been confirmed, and it's true. He's not going to be the voice of Mario in the upcoming Super Mario Bros. Wonder. It really means that the last mainline Mario game that he did was Odyssey. He did do the voice in the Bowser's Fury expansion that was on the port of 3D World. But as far as a full game goes, Odyssey was the last real, solo Mario game. I'm not counting the Rabbids game. I'm not counting some of the sports games. But the last mainline Mario game would have been Odyssey. And I think that's kind of beautiful because Odyssey, at its core, so many of the bones, so many of the building blocks and foundations of Odyssey was Super Mario 64, which was his first game, And so look back and play Odyssey, which is such a love letter to Mario 64, and think about how that this is a love letter to the beginning of his career, and it's now the cap. It's like the end of that career, and I think that's kind of amazing. And again, yeah, there were other games, there were party games and sports games that he still lent his voice to, but as far as mainline Mario games go, okay, as far as Mario-centric games, not the ones about all the characters, the ones where you're specifically platforming as Mario, that's the last one. And it's, as beautiful as it is, it's also really sad because that game was 7 years ago, man. we could have got more. We could have had an Odyssey 2, you know? And I think we could still get those games, but it's just, it feels hollow without him, you know? And we'll all get used to it. You know, it's something that we'll get used to. He couldn't be the voice forever. Eventually, he was going to move on. So maybe this is for the best. I don't know. As far as we know and as far as we've seen, this was a mutual decision. There doesn't seem to be anything, you know, negative or anything that was like shady about the situation. So as far as we know, both parties just kind of decided upon this. And I like to hope that that's true. I would really like if this was a mutual decision. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just a naive optimist. I don't know. But until I know otherwise, I'd really like to just hope. And, you know, I am going to think until I know for a fact that this was a decision that was made by both parties. So, Charles, I know you're not watching this right now, but for any reason, if you ever happen to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for breathing such life and energy into these roles, for being just such a nice, genuine individual. Thank you for the amazing times and just for everything, for being such a positive part of this series and of this franchise and of these characters. Thank you. Seriously. Yeah, that's about it. This video was one that was just for me. I didn't really need to make this. Plenty of people that do commentary stuff have already talked about it, but, you know, call it coping, call it catharsis, just from how sad I was when I read the news originally, but I needed this. So if you made it this far, I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. I have other things planned that I'm working on coming soon. One of them was supposed to be today instead of this, but this took precedence. I really needed to say something about this. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all next time.
Thank you so much for playing my game.
Bye, everybody.
These are my boys.